Evening, everybody. We're back. 2023. Happy New Year to you all. I hope you've had a good Christmas. I actually managed to have a bit of time chilling out, to be honest with you. It's been nice. I think a few people thought I'd vanished. That used to me being plugged into everything all the time. I think it was a bit of a shock when I've put my phone down for a little while. So good to be back, though. New Year, plenty ahead. Already kicked it off, announcing the new event the other day. They've made some progress on the cough as well. Actually managed to find out that in 2015 I was diagnosed asthmatic. So as I said to the doctor, it was nice of somebody to tell me that. So it's getting a little bit better, but at least I know what's doing it now. Not a great time of year for it either. So there we go. Had the pleasure of you might have seen from the last Q&A when we had Crafty on, Crafty Koi. Managed to get him up between Christmas and New Year, along with Mr. Tate, which was good fun. And you might remember I offered Crafty to pick a fish that we're going to auction off. That we're going to donate proceeds to the charity of his choosing. So he has picked a stunning Ginrin Achiever from the Coda batch. And I believe he's got some nice video content coming out soon as well. So look out for that. And there he is, Mr. Tate. Evening. I hope you've got over the visit to my place the other day. Just rest assured, everybody, getting plenty of flack. And it was given back as well. So good laugh anyway. So you might have seen as well, I guess most people on here also follow Lee Hadfield, aka the Koi Soldier. And you've probably seen that we've teamed up with him and exclusively Koi to put on what I think is going to be a pretty epic event. If you've not seen that video already, be sure to jump over to his channel. But basically the event, the tickets go live for sale on the exclusively Koi website this Saturday. I'm doing the selection on the pond tomorrow, so I'm going to drop a little bit of video footage, hopefully on Friday, of all that. But yeah, the event, it's $4.95 a ticket, and it's a physical event that's being hosted at Newark Showground on the 5th of February, I think it is. With these cracking Tucano Sankeys that are going to be brought back. So the events for the selection day, it's by invitation only, so for ticket holders only at that particular event. And the fish are going to be there. The selection is going to be drawn and done on that day. We've got the awesome local, I say burger van, it's not really that, gourmet food truck, Meat Castles attending, doing the catering. And I'm going to be there. Chris, in fact, the whole team's coming along. Steve, as well as obviously Lee. So the whole lot to do the event, select the fish, and then they're going to be returned back to my facility and grown on there for 3 months before we then do a return event where the fish are basically going to be judged. We're going to have some prizes and make another go of it then. So wicked 2-part event. With some amazing fish, got the growing on there as well. So, hopefully get some cracking growth on them. And yeah, should be good all round. So like I say, if you've not seen the video already, make sure to get on Lee Hadfield's channel and have a look. And look out for the video I'm going to drop on Friday, just ahead of those tickets being released for sale on Saturday. There are only 50 tickets available for 50 fish. We're actually going to be, there's going to be 100 fish available on the day to choose from, but we're only releasing 50 tickets. So super one. If you got some of that Christmas money, kicking around wondering what to do with it, then there it is. That's the one for you. So look forward to seeing how that one goes, guys, and actually look forward to getting the event underway, because hopefully it's going to be a nice grounding for plenty more of this kind of thing to come, which is going to be quite cool. So. This evening I've not got too much planned, to be honest with you. I'm still just getting back into the swing of it, so I'm going to work through any of the old questions that we've got stored up, and likewise, if you've got any new ones, feel free to get firing them in, and I'll work through them for you guys. So Yeah, look forward to it. We're going to be getting back in the podcast studio soon as well for Koi Talk, me and Chris. That's probably a bit of a starting point, because you remember I've been talking a lot, in the early parts of these content about water. And it's quite nice, actually, that I've been now, I think it's 5 different tests I've done with this company out in Germany that I'm using for various people across the country. And we're getting some very, very interesting results back from them. One of them seems to be an underlying issue with iron on every test that I've done. Absolutely, and I mean this, elevated levels of iron, which is then creating a background problem. This when there's all these other, there's iron and manganese, they seem to come hand in hand. But this iron and manganese is a problem where then anything else, even at small levels, say copper, zinc, or anything like that's becoming a bigger problem. But also got some other, interesting news. I won't go into it too much right now, so I'm going to leave it for the podcast. However, we've managed to find that one of the purifiers on the market, I'm not sure of the exact models, it's with a guy I've been working with who's actually got one installed, did some testing on the mains water, and after purifier, this mains water had horrendous copper and pretty poor zinc on it as well. And the purifier nullified it. So really, really glad to see that as well. So it's some good news. It's further information. Like I say, we are working on this stuff when we bring it to people's attentions. We're not just throwing it out there and leaving it. I think it's going to be useful information. So look out for that. Look out for that podcast coming up. And hi, Nan. Overdue a catch up. Been a bit busy recently. So I'll start off. I've just seen one question there. Alan Finlay. Hi, Ricky. What is the correct pronunciation of tateshita? Is the correct way of pronouncing that? When in Japanese, the E's are pronounced as an A and I's are E's. So in that case, tateshita is the right way to say that. So the same as actually with tategoi, when you say it correctly. So I hope that helps with that one. Right. Anyway, let's. I think we've got a few questions firing in here, so we'll start with those first. Paul, over in Italy, how's things in Italy, Paul? Do you think the snowstorm did any damage to the koi farms? My God! So I was in Japan. I got back the week before Christmas, out there for a 10-day all-in trip with the traveling. And when I hit Niigata, the snow. So one particular day we woke up, I think there'd been about 70 to 80 centimeters overnight, but primarily we was hit with it down in the city. When we got up into the mountains, it was carnage. It tested my driving abilities, to say the least. But again, they got on top of it, as they do every day, and it sort of cleared up. But then, the day after I got home, I think they had 1.2 meters overnight. Absolutely unbelievable amounts of snow. From what I know, it didn't do any damage, other than it actually stopped the place. And this is a place that's very, very well built for dealing with high levels of snow. But for that amount to drop in such a small time period was just insane. And it really did just stop everything, stop the roads. It overwhelmed the place. So, they're all on top of it, got on top of it pretty quickly. But from what I know, no damage done, because they are very, very used to dealing with large amounts. This was just probably that 20% or so extra in one hit that they're not used to. So it took a little bit of getting on top of, but it is quite remarkable to see, how they deal with this stuff. But it does become a big part of daily life, in all honesty, for the breeders, especially, in Niigata and up in the mountains, because it's that much. If they don't keep on top of the snow every day, as well as, locals and the government and everything doing their bit, it very quickly just get overwhelmed, and the place would be a nightmare and life would grind to a halt. So hats off to them. They're used to it, but yeah, it's some dedication to keep on top of it all. So yes, there we have it with that one. It's actually just reminded me of something. Ricky, when are the new batch of Koi Talk binders going to be ready? Do you know as yet? So yeah, we're not. It's not a new batch, but we did have some left in reserve in case there was any problems with postage or anything like that. So we are actually, now that's all done, we're going to release. We've got 30 left, and that's it. So we're actually going to get them live, the last 30 binders live on the website on Saturday. We'll pop out in the Koi Talk subscribers club and whatnot, the full details and times, but they'll be probably Saturday morning, they'll get released for sale, and that is going to be it for a while on those ones, because that was from the original batch that we just kept in reserve. So yes, we're going to be letting them ones go, so get ready for that one if you're after one. And they've been very well received, which was nice. Oh, we're a cracking bit of kit then. So there we go. When should I use different types of sake akari, and which should I mix to create an ideal diet for my koi to have a great outcome? That really depends on where you're at. You know, if you're this time of year, are you heated? Aren't you heated? If you're in really cool sort of ambient temperatures at the minute, you do need to be looking more, especially with as cold as it is, more like the multi-season. If you're eating sort of 12 and above, I'd be happy, because feeding is not going to be a lot at that temperature. I'd be happy to be using a small amount of sake balance at that temperature, because it is just going to be a little bit, and I've found that ponds cope with that perfectly well. Multi-season is made up of very high quality wheat germ and other ingredients, as well as the akari germ still. So that's there. And again, if you're heated 18 or above, you'd be looking at balance, color, growth, depending on what you want to be doing. It's quite interesting that when Crafty and Alan actually came to see me, I was looking at some of the big fish in the Dainichi pond, and I pointed out there that you could actually see, because I'd still been pushing them fish quite hard as we moved into winter and really lost the daylight hours. And you could really see how it had affected the pigment in a really short space of time, because I'm still pushing these fish, and the last sort of month to 6 weeks, they have stuck a lot on. The bodies are really stretched out, and they've gained that extra centimetre or two, but it's had an adverse effect on the colour, because we've just not got the daylight and the UV penetration that's needed. So that is something I'm working on now. I've dropped the temperature to basically stop them growing and that colour contracting anymore. And I'm switching them to a straight colour food for a little while before I then begin to work on conditioning the shiroji, because, like I say, the lack of daylight hours, or lack of UV more than anything, which is the biggest bit, has really, really, pulled that colour back. It's remarkable. So one to bear in mind, especially those people who are covering this time of year, you've got to be careful, because polycarbonate, a lot of polycarbonate cuts UV radiation or emission through it. So although you're letting light through, you're not actually getting the UV, and the UV is the important part for the pigmentation. That's why my greenhouse sheets, I just use the cheapest clear visqueen going, because it gets full UV penetration through, and then allows me to deal with it accordingly after that. And if you've got covers, obviously, if they're algaeing up and you're cutting, UV and stuff that way, it is going to have an adverse effect on the fish's colour. So probably, one to worth bearing in mind there. But I hope that helps with the food. It's just going to really depend on the circumstances. If you want to tell me a little bit more of where you're at while we're on, I can answer that a bit more in depth for you. Let's have a look. Ian, how are you doing, buddy? I presume I'm supposed to say non-heated amongst us, do you recommend increasing feeding with this warmer spell we are having, or would you leave the koi to have a more natural winter? Yeah, I wouldn't recommend increasing feeding, to be honest with you. I would be keeping it to an absolute bare minimum at the minute. You're just keeping everything ticking over, and it's more important than ever this time of year not to get caught out with the more milder spells. This winter, if you're unheated, is just about keeping things ticking over. If they're up at the top, give them a little bit, but I would recommend more that you consistently try and feed the same amount every day, if that's what you're doing, because your system will not tolerate big variances in the feeding this time of year. Because although the fish's behavior might change, that filter is still very much asleep at the temperatures that we're having. So wouldn't recommend going too crazy with the food. Just enough, once, probably daily, just to keep things ticking over nicely. And if it gets too cold, the minute they sort of hit the bottom, that's when it's time to sort of leave it alone and leave them be. So more than anything, it's balancing what the filters can do this time of year, because if you do get a spike from overfeeding slightly on a warm day, the bacteria is not going to be active enough to colonize quickly to deal with the spike. It's going to take a long time. Therefore, you're going to expose the fish to bad water for a longer period of time, and that's what you want to be really careful of in that case. So hope that helps you, buddy, and I hope everything's well. So yeah, just coming back on. Wow, summers are 25 to 35, winters go down to 16. So yeah, if you're on Saki Akari, sorry folks, yeah, summertime, absolutely want to be on Saki growth and colour. You're going to need that because you're going to have very warm water, so you're going to want to be supporting the colour as well. Probably wouldn't look at balance with you being that warm, because they're going to be the metabolism is going to be firing really well. And you're going to want some higher fat content in there to keep the body on and keep the energy levels up. And yeah, winter. So winter, if you're going down to 16 degrees, I'd probably just be looking at then at that point, balance and just keeping them ticking over with that should be more than fine for what you've got going on there. Right, just bear with me. Ooh, there's a good one. Rory O'Donnell. Is it possible to get a Kuro Goshiki with floating Benny in hard water, or will Sumi always come through eventually? And if so, what breeder? That is the impossible dream, Rory. I'm not going to beat around the bush with that. I think it's important here to manage expectations with this sort of Goshiki. So basically, what in floating Benny, what we've got to do is, because in some breeders and in most cases, the Sumi is sat in the skin. It's there. And basically what the Benny is doing, the Benny is just blocking that Sumi out. So it's really important to get super thick Benny in order to block the Sumi out. But believe me, in Japan, I think the people hold in mind this absolutely perfect floating Benny. There's probably a handful of Goshiki in the world that's ever been like that, and they don't stay like it for very long. There is a shelf life to this. And this is where you get these, they hit their peak for the show and then it falls off, at some point after that. Some might keep going for a couple of years, but the longevity to them is not very long. When you come into the more Kuro style, so they get darker. So if we consider Aoki, for example, probably one of the best Kuro Goshiki breeders and most consistent, obviously to get that black, we've got even more Sumi sat in the skin that you've got to try and block out. So I think it's important more to maybe readjust the thought process on what one of these actually looks like. And we're not talking, complete perfection, because it doesn't really exist. What you want is really one that's probably 80 to 90% perfect, and you're going to get blemishes on them somewhere. It's going to happen. It's realistic, and that's managing expectations. But then managing it even more is when budget comes into play, because unless you are playing with thousands and thousands of pounds to buy one of these, I mean, they were consistently probably the most expensive variety at Narita's event when I was there on my last trip, and they weren't perfect. They were still a shitload of money, thousands of pounds. So when you start working back from that, again, your compromises. So as budget comes down, compromises go up, completely normal. And it's probably, again, adjusting that expectation of it. And again, they're going to perform very differently in different waters as well. And given the age of it, there's just so much and so many variables there. So if you can't live with them not being perfect, or if you've got that perfect image in your head, it's probably not the right variety for you. So it's probably better to adjust those expectations a little bit. Best breeders, though, in my opinion, ones I've had in the UK, Kano, but Kano is not all floating Benny style. It's quite a unique style of Goshiki, which is probably the best one I've had in the UK, to be honest with you. In Japan, Kawakami is exceptional, but Kawakami Goshiki in the UK, from all my experience, is an absolute no-go. So you've got these things to bear in mind as well. And it happens in Japan. I've had fish at Minima that looked absolutely promising. They've got that year, 2 year down the line, and they've tanked it. It's, as well as the lineage, it's, as I say, it's all about that Benny, because the Benny is basically the blocker for that black coming through on it. So, but when you get it perfect, like I say, it's at some point it's going to give in. So please do bear that in mind. Alan Finlay, is it possible to get rugby ball shaped koi back into shape? Now that is a great question, and I suppose if we're talking here about, so realistically, rugby ball, that's it's depending on the angle it comes from. If you've got a slight bit of a gut on a fish, I think the main point here is if it all depends on the structure of the fish, and I talk about this a lot. But if the structure of the fish is one that is creating that rugby ball, i.e. the belly line's not right, the fish hasn't got the right amount of height or length to it, whatever it is, then what you're basically going to have there is a fish that you could manipulate only through body. You see, when I talk about body and structure, the rugby ball part, if it's got that kind of body, you could manipulate it by, really reducing feeding or something like that for it, trying to keep it really lean. But always, because if the structure's not right, the minute you hit it with more food or any kind of environment like that, that rugby ball shape is just going to come back, because it'll be inherent within the structure of the fish, because it'll be a structure that can't carry the weight or hasn't got the right belly line, and that's why it produces that type of body. So, yeah, unfortunately, the answer probably is no, because all I'm talking about, what you can manipulate and change easy is body. So if I overfeed and create a lot of volume and get the fish looking slightly heavy, I can thin that off very quickly. Just as an example, keeping the water at, say, 22 degrees, but massively reducing feed or even stopping feeding within 2 weeks will make a huge difference to the fish. However, if it has got that rugby ball shape, I've got no chance of correcting that other than making it look a little bit better. But the minute it hits the food again, it's just going to go back to how it was. So I hope that helps with that. Right, Terry, how are you doing, Terry? Any advice on adding a new koi to an unheated pond, covered, and reduce flow rates? Right, so yes, fish do move. I was actually having this conversation with Alan when I saw him, because I've got a pond outside. I've got fish that have been settled into the cold before it got really cold. So they were well settled, and the cold snap came. They've been great. They sort of bottomed when it got really cold, and now they're all up on the surface again, looking great. There was, however, then a couple of batches that have gone out and they got hit with a cold snap as we was acclimatizing them and bringing them outside. And I'm going to have a job, they're not the happiest of fish at the minute, and a job recovering them. I'm using salt to try and aid the osmotic process, and the skin just doesn't look great. Now, it's not that these are not fish that are going to die or anything like that. It's just they're not looking the best, and recovering them back to looking the best is going to be hard, even at the current temperatures we've got that are, quite mild, really. So, yeah, when you're introducing a new one, you really need to make sure this is the only issue. Now, fish do move really well when it's cold, and it's not an issue moving them around. The issue comes is if something goes wrong. So if that new koi doesn't mix very well or reacts to the water change badly, or it doesn't mix very well with the other fish in the pond, and either that new fish gets a bit sulky or the other group gets a bit sulky because, something alien's come in with the new fish, what you're going to tend to find is any recovery in an unheated pond is going to be really, really slow. So the best advice I could give is salt is great for this at this point, because you relieve a lot of that osmotic pressure, which is not going to be working too well when it's this cold. You take that pressure away from the body, just alleviate any stress as well. But what I would say is, if you're doing it, don't keep drip feeding new fish in, because that every opportunity there is an opportunity for something to go wrong. But yeah, just be aware. And I mean, it's ideal, even with heating, it's ideal to have heating there, even just as a backup. Even if you don't plan on using it, because it's there's people out there keeping fish at ambient, including myself, absolutely fine. It's just there always in case of any problems. And if there is a problem, you can use it for 2 or 3 weeks just to recover the issue, help get things back on track before bringing them back off of it. So Yeah, probably the best advice I can give on actually introducing the fish is to salt up, just to alleviate the stress, you know, help with the osmotic pressure, and yeah, fingers crossed it sort of all goes well from there on in. Introducing a fish into a pond is very different from, I mean, the scenarios I described, we basically transplanted a whole pond of fish from outside the fish houses, which was probably a little bit, the coldest we could get it was to 14. Then over a few days, they're coming down to, you know, substantially lower temperatures than that. So they are, like I said, they are coming round, but it's just a slow process that we have to manage. So yeah, hope that's helpful, Terry. Gary, Ricky, my wife just asked, is it possible to get rugby ball shaped pond owners back into shape? That I cannot advise on in the slightest. Maybe some of you guys out there can give some better advice on that one, because I'm certainly not the man for it. Elliot, over in the States, how are you doing, Elliot? How many koi did you purchase this year? Oh my God. I don't actually know in numbers. I know what it cost me in pounds, shilling and pence up until about April, May this year, which was, yeah, wild sort of record numbers. We're in the tens of thousands. I mean, ballpark, probably 40, 50,000 fish. I mean, there's still absolutely shitloads kicking around up there, and more coming in, you know. Again, just had another 1,050 Sakai fish, 350 Omasako, Shiros, Sakai Dragon Ball Sankis. You know, it's always big numbers coming in. So yeah, I can't answer that exactly, but it was, I know this 2022 was a record year for it. So it's all good, but we'll see where this year heads. Certainly, as it stands, space being limited, because I've got 2 greenhouses. So one's already decommissioned, stripped down and gone, and the other I'm putting up for sale soon, one of the quarantine houses. As soon as I can get that emptied of fish before I start the new 2 new fish house builds, which I'm looking forward to. But that is, however, putting me 14 ponds out of action, which is a lot. So yeah, we're having to adjust and manage and sort of work around that at the moment. So yeah, be a bit more selective on what comes in this year, and sort of, you know, got a bit of a new strategy in place for buying as well. But it started off well. This last batch of Sakai fish, which are ones from my grow-ons, I'm very excited about. They look, yeah, insane. It's to get that quality of small toesai from Sakai is really not easy. So yeah, buzzing for that one. And the Takano Sankis for the event, we've got quite a few people, a few more people tuned in now. So for those who weren't here at the beginning, if you haven't seen it already, we've got an event that we're hosting in collaboration with Lee Hadfield, Koi Soldier, and exclusively Koi. This is actually going to be a physical event hosted at Newark Showground on the 5th of February with a batch of Takano Sankis that I've managed to get hold of. I'm going to be doing a selection on that pond tomorrow, so I'm going to drop a quick video on that you'll be able to see on Friday, but tickets go on sale at the weekend on the Exclusively Koi website. So you'll be able to, if you go on our site, on the blog, or their site, you can read the full details of the event, or even better, hop on over to Lee Hadfield's channel if you've not seen it, because he stitched together a wonderful video there to sit and watch. So should explain everything, but this is, yeah, the first of these sort of physical events we're going to look to pull together, and yeah, really excited to see how it goes. Tickets are $495, and for that you get a super koi, obviously, entrance to the event, and the fish are actually going to be grown on with me for 3 months at the facility before coming back for a return event, which is going to be turned into a sort of like a mini show. So yeah, pretty cool all around, and yeah, well worth a shot. So yeah, I'd say head on over to Lee's channel or one of the websites and have a read up about that. But don't miss it on Saturday. There's only 50 tickets available, and I'm expecting them to fly out. So yeah, look forward to seeing how that one goes. Gary, if you are losing colour from lack of UV, will it return once uncovered in the spring? Yeah, absolutely. It will come back. It's just, you know, in high-end koi raising, what we're trying to do is keep, I think I've mentioned this before, developing colors just like it's like layering up paint. You know, every year comes and it's like getting another layer, so we get the thickness until we finally get the color to its peak. Now, what's happened in this case is that's actually stepped these fish back a period, and that will happen in most cases. It's sort of like a step backwards that you then got to push on, and it's only really going to affect the Benny. It will sort of thin Sumi out a little bit, but yeah, ultimately it's the Benny it's hitting more. What can happen, like in a 3-color koi like that, for example, you can have Sumi progressing, and this is a thing like with Showa. If you're trying to bring a Showa to its peak for a show, what we've got to do is try and get all 3 colors in sync at the perfect time in its life, and it's not easy. So if you know, the Sumi is going to keep progressing, and if, just for example, if you get that Benny fall back at the same time, what could happen is you end up with the Sumi and Shiroji hitting its peak and the Benny actually being off it a little bit, and by the time you pull the Benny back, you might have lost the peak of the Sumi. It's really, when you get into it at that level, it can be really, really stressful. Probably what we're talking about here is just this simple sort of step backwards. Yeah, as soon as the colours come off and you get a bit of the opportunity to get a bit of colour food into them as well, you'll soon keep that colour coming. There is an eventuality, however, so if people keeping koi indoors with no natural daylight, so no UV, there can come a point where you can pull the colour back so far, you can sort of damage it beyond repair a little bit, and depending how old the fish is as well. That's why it's, you know, ideal if you're indoors trying to get the right kind of lighting that can give off a bit of, you know, UV or something like that. So yeah, it depends where you're at, but it can definitely be recovered. Douglas there, hi Ricky, do I have to be a dealer for that? No, like I say, it's hosted. I'm basically just putting it all together. It's actually being hosted by Lee and Exclusively Koi, who are a dealer. So this event is open to the public. That's who it's for. So yeah, anybody can take point, but please, you know, have a read up. But it's open for everybody to participate in. Let's have a look what else we've got. Jay Beza. Ricky, the koi I have are not show koi. They're nice fish at my stage of koi keeping. I'm paying roughly £250 each for koi. I know you advocate using sake akari, but I'm told it's pointless using sake akari unless you have high-end koi. What's your thoughts on that, please? I absolutely love that one when I hear it said, because it's crazy mindset. Now let's flip this back, right? It's ultimately koi for most of you guys out there are pets as well, and I think everybody wants what's best for their pets. There's no argument that sake akari is the best choice for your koi, and if you can, regardless of the value, it doesn't matter. The value of the koi, it's irrelevant. If it works for you, if it works paying the price for the food to give them the best possible chance and all the other benefits that it brings, then go for it. If it doesn't work financially for you buying the food, then you need to look for alternatives. You know, there are other good foods out there. I won't get into recommending because I don't use them, and I don't get behind stuff that I don't fully back and basically put my money where my mouth is with it. But no, that mindset to me is just absolutely ludicrous. You know, even at £250 each, guy, let's say it's £250 you're paying for a koi. You want to give that koi, regardless of what money you've paid for them, 20 quid, 50 quid, it doesn't. You want to give them the best opportunities, and using that food is giving them the best opportunities. So if it's financially viable, you should do it without a doubt. It'd be worth watching, flicking back through the channel, the video I did as well, looking at the price comparison, if you've not seen it already, on the price per kilo, because that's a really important thing to look at when you're buying foods. Is not the bag price, is looking at it per kilo versus the other ones, because when I did that, it clearly highlighted that it's not all about, it's not actually the most expensive, or it's the price difference is marginal compared with a lot of these others foods, which I consider to be substantially inferior in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that one. That to me is just ludicrous advice. If you can afford to give your fish sake akari, give them the absolute best, then you should. If not, you look for the next best alternative that does fit within budget. That's just like say, I can't, they're only 250 quid. So why bother? Just give them an absolute pile of shit that they're not going to digest. They're going to do nothing with, go downhill, create ill health, blah, 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 all the rest of it. Just mind blowing madness. So, that's my take on that one. And whoever gave you that advice needs to go and take a look in the mirror, I think, with that one. Let's have a look. Always when we get onto that food topic, and I just genuinely, when I talk about the food, it is just how I'm wired. I made that decision to start feeding sake because, for me, even it's a huge investment. If you saw what I spent on food in a year, I could make a 60% cost saving overnight like that. But would I want to? No, it's no coincidence. I'm raising fish, and Alan commented there, and I'm just going to say, Alan, obviously we've not really spoke since. Please just, fire a quick comment together and let people know what you witnessed with your own eyes at my place. Because I've had some people say, when they've watched my videos, question if the colours are enhanced and things like that. What you can't also get, and Crafty actually commented as well, certain bits you don't get the true impact on the videos. It's quite hard replicating the colour at times. You miss the skin luster, and there's no coincidence I'm having the best results I've ever had in years since I've gone back to this. So it's completely worth the investment because there's just so many other dynamics to it. But the sort of point where I got onto here is I don't recommend products. So there are other good foods out there, okay foods, I would say. They don't compare against that. It's not me being arrogant or anything like that. I'm just never going to back a product that I'm not using and solely getting behind myself with my own cash. It's just not, it's not where I'm at. But like I say, I think it's always worth, if sake is not a price option for you and it's not something you can make work, I would suggest using or looking at for an alternative, to be honest. So speak to your dealers. A lot of your dealers out there will be using other foods as well, and they'll have more experience of using other foods. I literally only use sake, nothing else. So for me to comment, I've used other foods in the past. Like I say, I don't want to mention the brand that I've used because I don't, and for reasons, because they completely trash the recipe, downgrading fish meal to poultry meal. Just never ever is that something that I can accept. But there's other good food, okay foods I've used in the past. I do quite like Takazumi. Of other foods I've used over the years, I've found that to be one of the better ones for sure. And I like the fact it's from a recipe that Takazumi actually developed themselves, so it's a little bit more unique than some. Because a lot of foods out there are all coming from the same place and just being rebranded and repackaged. So ultimately, it's the same one. And a lot of them foods are the brand I actually moved away from, which I did used to rate until they made them changes. And they were massive changes, and I saw a massive impact from it. So, yes, just seen an interesting one there from Elliot. This is actually talk about foods, but this is a crazy one again. What are your thoughts about feeding Hikari silkworm pellets worth the price? I love silkworm. Silkworm is fantastic if you can get it right. So the pelletized silkworm is better because it doesn't oxidize. It keeps fresher. And there is a Japanese brand called, I think it's Kenkakanri. It is. They're the original sort of big silkworm producer in Japan. And they made a silkworm food that I used years ago, and that stuff is phenomenal. Really, really rated it. Never had a chance to use it since because it's not been in the UK. I'm not sure why. It's actually a question I probably need to ask next time I'm there. I'm sure there's some probably licensing reasons or just sheer cost, because silkworm prices in Japan rocketed as demand over years has diminished. So it's possibly one reason why importers stopped bringing it in. But even still, would I say it's as good as sake overall? It's probably too long ago for me to say, but I do remember, being wowed by the results of that back in the day. But yeah, silkworm's a great addition. If you can get it, I think even Hikari stopped doing the silkworm pellets in the UK from what I can gather. But if you can still get them in the States, Elliot, well worth chucking in there at the peak of your summer. I think you'll probably find you'll be able to take body volume and skin luster, and silkworm is pretty phenomenal for white skin as well. So yeah, definitely worth supplementing with that one for sure. Let's have a look. He says open date quail, so I wish, buddy. It's just practically quite impossible. It is a working farm, and there's just a lot going on all the time. But that's why, again, do the videos and everything as much as I can, just to share as much going on as I can do as well. But yeah, it's not a very practical one for that for me, unfortunately. Right, let's have a look. Another one there, gone quite food orientated tonight. What would you say about mealworm? Again, I'm not against any of those sort of natural foods used in summer at the right time. Mealworm, I like the sort of shrimpy based stuff, shrimp, krill, all the rest of it. Be careful with, because that can really impact the skin and the colour, giving a bit of a nasty artificial glow and really tanking the shiroji. But yeah, mealworm, silkworm, all them high protein, high fat for the main summer period. You know, absolutely great foods to be using, and can really help sort of boost that body volume up as well. So yeah, I've absolutely got no issues with that one. There's Alan. So yeah, no videos marked. That's it. Skin and colours are true, and that's it. You've seen it. That, you know, the pigmentation's out of this world, and that's just, again, colour foods. You know, if you're using, there's colour foods on the market. Well, there's not actually that many specialist colour foods or dedicated colour foods, because a lot of manufacturers tend to mix it into the pellet, which is something else that drives me crazy, because, you know, when I'm using that, I want to make my own blend of what I want to do based on the fish that I'm dealing with and the results that I need to get. And yeah, I mean, it all comes down, again, it's like with quality food, it's the quality of fish meal. With colour foods, it's not only the fish meal, it's the quality of the spirulina. That is absolutely essential. And yeah, you get all different grades of this, down to the sort of ones that will create a light green to the pellet. Trust me, they're going to have no impact. And that's where the old false economy thing comes in again. You know, a poor quality colour food, you probably have to feed 2 or 3 times the amount of it to get the same impact you would using something the quality of sake or curry. Then before you know it, it makes the sake look cheap. So yeah, one to bear in mind. But like I say, is achieve pigmentation levels and working on it in that way that are just absolutely mind-blowing. And it's not just the colour that comes with it. You know, these healthy foods, again, I'm all about the sort of the gut health thing. And I think this is something I was actually looking into recently in humans more and more, that, you know, recent studies and research have shown that basically our whole health is dependent on our gut health. You know, it's dictating so much, even down to mood and all the rest of it. And fish are no different for me. And this is one thing that you forget. You know, sake, really, they created this Sakari germ, the bacteria that's in the food that sits in the gut, and age with this digestion, age with the health. And I believe to get ultimate skin quality and skin luster, that comes from within, because it's all about, with koi, the quality and health of the mucus. If you've not got healthy mucus, you can't achieve good, you know, top skin luster. So like I say, there's so many more things other than just looking at outright growth and stuff like that. So yeah, should probably move on from the food topic now. Got one there from Rory again. Do golden corn have the behavior traits of the chagoi, krashgoi that mixed in, or do they end up more skittish with the asagi in there? No, I've found with golden corn, they're pretty aggressive feeders. I think the sort of crashy chagoi has taken over in that respect. Pretty big, fast growers as well, which has become a big part of the lineage. So yeah, from my experience, very aggressive feeders, and yeah, not one I would mix, you know, when I'm raising them, be mixing with fish that aren't naturally as aggressive or fast growing, to be honest. Right, just bear with me. Martin, good evening, mate. When you're trying to feed koi their maximum, do you work out percentage of body weight or just by eye? If it's a percentage, is that pellet only, or would you incorporate pulver? Yeah, so I mean, again, although I'll say, yeah, I absolutely don't mind, going outside, mixing other diet. I think that's more of a hobby side of things. For me, commercially, I stick with the pellet diet and make sure the pellet diet I'm using has got everything in. But no, I don't work on body percentages. I do it by eye and feeding windows, which I've discussed in some of the videos. So I set a time, because I tend to find if you stick it too much to percentage, you might not get the desired results ultimately in the end. I think it's important probably and more helpful with percentages to make sure you are actually getting the minimum amount, because that's a big thing that happens as well, is underfeeding. And then if you're not using a particularly good diet of food, you're going to have a problem there with the fish, malnutrition, health problems coming from that. So it's probably more helpful making sure you get the bare minimum, but at the top end of it, I think it's better to do it by eye when you've got the experience, because you can very quickly see. And not only that, if you stick to a core percentage and you work it out, you go, well, I need 3% of the body weight. That, works out to X amount of, 100 grams per day. And all of a sudden you start putting that into the pond, and then your system can't actually handle it, then you've got a problem, because just how some people operate, and I know this, you stick to that because it's a rule, think I need to be feeding 3% a day, then you're feeding 3% a day, but your system can't handle it. So I think it's a lot more important to be sticking with going, judging and assessing what's going on in the pond, what's going on in the fish, because likewise, you could be feeding 3% and finding that it's too much. The fish are getting too fat and too bulky on it. Because it's going to come down to the diet as well. That's another part. Once again, conversion ratio is a massive part in actually working out how good a value of food is. Because if you're feeding 3%, but you've only got food converting 80%, yes, and that's actually quite a high number for some foods. Then it's a big difference if you're feeding, something that's converting. The crazy stuff on one of these papers that I've got from Hikari when they produce sake is they got 120%. It was a well over 100% conversion ratio. That they were mind blown as to what happened, because they were benchmarking it against Hikari Gold, which has been like the market leader for years, that only had an 80% conversion ratio. So many variables to it that I like to gauge it by eye. It's the method that's sort of been taught to me by the breeders, doing it in the mud ponds as well, because out there they've got to gauge a lot of what's happening by eye and adjust accordingly, because they're also balancing a pond and an ecosystem, and you just don't want to push it too far. So I feel like with a percentage system, it would lead to probably more confusion and people then probably overfeeding and sacrificing a lot of other stuff and making mistakes there, because they think they've got to be feeding that amount, when realistically, I think in most cases, you're going to be more working to what your system's capable of. And not only that, when you actually do the sort of 2 or 3% body weight ratios that you'll be looking for, the minute you've got big fish, and I'll actually make a note of this and try and do some figures for you for next time, you'll find that the amount of food it actually comes to, I know in your case you've got a lot of big fish, Martin, you would be into kilos, serious kilos a day to hit that 2-3%. And then, having a system that's capable of processing that and keeping an appetite stimulated enough to eat that amount of food, whole different game altogether. So, for me, stick with going with what I see and adjust it from there, really. So, really been a food special, this evening. Tony just dropped in there. Do you have an update on the NND event, Koi? Yes, we're working on that shipment at the moment. Between that, we've had like 3 or 4 shipments to get organised. And on top of that, we're waiting for pond space at my facility as well. So we're looking to bring that one to a close, and those fish will be in this month. And like I said on my last video, we're going to be overwintering those for everybody free of charge as well. So keeping them for anybody who wants to until March at no extra charge. On the bad note to that is people will be getting their invoices for shipping on those ones soon. Right, just bear with me. Get back in. I've just come out of the questions there, which was a bad idea. Joe Mitchell, evening, Joe. To achieve maximum results, is an auto feeder essential for hobbyists? It works. Yeah, if we're talking about raising koi properly, again, it's no question you need an automatic feeder. The biggest thing with growth is consistency, because the whole thing from the start of summer to the end, it's a build-up process. It's building up the fish's appetite for processing the food properly, and it's building up the system along with it at the same time to handle the feeding levels. And it's amazing how quickly it drops off. You know, if I have to interrupt for whatever reason, you tend to find that within a few days, you can lose up all the gains that you've built, and you have to go back to way below where you were to then start building it back up again. So, you know, this is where an auto feeder comes in, because it gives you control. You know, in the case of the Japanese ones that I've got, the feed is set on seconds. So I can gradually increase, you know, even sometimes when I'm increasing a feed cycle, I'll go in and first of all, you know, say I've got the 9 feeds, 8 feeds, whatever it is, I'll probably increase 4 of them or 5 of them to begin with, let the system adapt to that, then bring the other ones in line and then go again from there. And it's really important not to go too far as well, because that's when you then have to start correcting your water, bringing the fish back off it. And again, you lose time there and have to go back, you know, to sort of baseline before where you started and start building again from there. So yeah, it's just the consistency. Even if you had, you know, if you're out there and you're retired and at home with your koi all day, doing this, you know, getting this level of consistency without an auto feeder is hard work. And all you need is just the time to observe what's going on in between it, which is doable. And like I say, making the adjustments accordingly, because that's a big thing I find when you're setting a feeding level, you've got to remember that the fish grow. So the food requirements at day one are very different to the food requirements a month later when the fish are bigger and they need more. So you've got to keep these increases going in order to keep pushing the growth more. And again, you can't do it without a feeder. Even if I look, you know, mine start at 6 a.m. in the morning and finish at 10 p.m. at night, you know, and that's every 2 hours on at the height of the growing season. That's not achievable in daily life for anybody. So you need the auto feeder to fill in and do that work for you. But, you know, and on them as well, that's when the likes of sinking pellet, you've got to be a lot, you know, very careful with, because ultimately uneaten food, if you've got floating and you've got a skimmer, it ends up in the skimmer, or it stays on top of the pond. Yeah, crazy. So feeders, absolute must. Martin there, Clark's Koi, just a quick one. We're all around 3,000 koi, all from Koi Wholesale. Yes, we need to keep those in the best possible condition for our customers. So regardless of cost, all our stock is fed Hikari. Yeah, absolutely good choice, that one, Martin. Lee, good evening, mate. Would you feed live feed like maggots? Again, no issues with it if koi will take. And what you tend to find is koi that are conditioned to a pelletized diet tend to find this stuff a little bit strange. But again, as hobbyists, you know, you can get a lot of enjoyment from doing stuff like that. And I get it. For me, not something I'm putting the effort into, because again, I know I'm giving them everything I need from the pelletized diet that they're getting, and everything outside of that is just extra cost, work, effort that ultimately we don't have the time for. But if that's something that you like doing, mate, getting your fingers into a pot of dirty maggots, then happy days. Go for it, pal. Mike Humphreys, hi Ricky, do you think any Akamatsuwas were available this year? Always something we're looking for. Again, yeah, not easy. I think last year they were quite relevant, and we do have them coming through. It's just, I think last year's we had quite a few, to be honest with you. They just sell very quickly. They are quite a popular variety, and one, whenever I can get my hands on them, I always do, because I do know how popular they are. I do like to get them from Otsuka, however, and getting them on their own is difficult. So we rely on what we get out of the mixers that we buy from him. So yeah, sit tight. I'm sure something will come along on that one. DT Koi, if you choose an auto feeder for hobbyists, what would you recommend? Yeah, so probably the best all-rounder I can recommend at the minute is the JBL feeder. These have just come back sort of with Mark II, because there were issues with Mark I. It was mainly a mold, the problem with the mold and the bases cracking out. But apparently that's all been fixed now. I've got some of the new ones arrived last week. And yeah, for me, for what they provide, all right, I think they're phenomenal value for money, actually, for what you're getting. Big hopper, great settings, good control over it. So yeah, all round, I think they're the best option. My preferred choice is the Japanese one from Kamiata. However, they are, in the UK, they're crazy expensive. There's actually a bit of a shortage of them at the minute for some reason. I was trying to get some while I was in Japan last time and failed with that one. But I think it's only marginal things that for a hobbyist would be irrelevant as for the reason they would be my choice. Now, for me, especially with Tosai, when I'm using a small pellet, I like really granular increases. I mean, I'm talking probably increasing a feed. I might go in and increase it by a second or 2 seconds. And that's probably the only downside I see to the JBL ones, is that the increase, it's on like a bar system. So it just steps up. And in some cases, it's not quite as granular as I would want that to be. However, I think in the scenario for most of you guys, that's not a trade-off that's worth the probably extra £600-700 you're going to pay. So probably ignore me on that one when it comes to them. And yeah, the JBL one, if the mold problem is truly fixed this time, would be the one that I would go for, because I think they're excellent value for money. There we go. Steve, do koi still feed during the night, i.e. no daylight? Yes, they do. They sense the food. And the biggest thing is the koi sense the route. They know the routine. This is the important thing to consider. They know, down to a T when that feeder is going to be going off. And this is why I say that consistency of what a feeder can bring is so important, because the koi learn the cycle. And that is really the first time I ever really truly witnessed that, and the importance of it is when I was working in Japan. I was at NND's mud pond complex, and I was on a small track, just about truck wide, got 2 ponds. One's pond of chagoi on one side we were manually feeding. And I mean, it was crazy. They were all up on the top, as you'd expect, going mad for it. The other side, when we turned up, it was a deep mud pond, about 3 meters deep, and there were no fish visible whatsoever. And just as I'm sorting the food out off the back of the truck, I turn around and all of a sudden the fish are all swirling around within the feeding ring. And just a few minutes later, the feeder went off. That was as much as I needed to see to understand how well koi learn these cycles. Just as the same way you'll probably notice they sense the patterns of you walking to your pond every day. That's why people often say, they feed completely differently when someone's with me, because what happens is they know the footsteps, the vibrations, they pick it all up, and know generally when it's you and you're down there, mainly most of the time yourself, you come, you add food, they sense that, they know it. That's why I said as well, it's important to sometimes try and observe from afar to understand the true behavior of the fish, because as soon as they sense them vibrations, way before you expect it, the behavior is changing because they hear it and they associate it with getting fed. So yeah, even with this, when they know that feeding cycle, they're always going to be aware and alert to it. So that's why I don't go beyond 10 o'clock in the evening, because it's important for me to let them rest, recover a little bit, and also let the system sort of recover before it starts the next day. So yeah, what I would say is, if it's like a random, if you decide to go out at night and just chuck a random food on at 10 o'clock and they're not used to feeding, it's probably not going to go down that well, although eventually they more than likely will come to it when they sense the food. But yeah, in the case of mine, they're completely used to it happening. And you think about it, obviously in the wild, if they're not resting, they're probably eating. So that's koi for you. They never tend to stop. Right, let's have a look. Douglas again. I'd love a Kohaku in not too distant future. Could you advise which breeder I should look at and what are the best things to look for? Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say, Douglas, to advise on that properly, it'd be more a question of, establishing where your budget's at first and then working back from that, because it's quite easy for me to sit here and say, Dainichi is what you want to be looking at, one of the best Kohaku breeders going. But if you want, say a Jumbo Tosai or a Nisai, that might become very impractical from a budget perspective. So yeah, that's always a tough question to answer from that regard. If you're asking me, probably sort of general mass market where there is good affordability and reach, Nogami is a very good choice. Hoshikin as well tends to have a lot of good fish in the market. Dainichi, I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a great year to sniff out a Dainichi Kohaku with the smaller ones, if it's a smaller fish you're after, that we've managed to get in now already at quite a lot of dealers across the country. They're at super affordable price points. Obviously, yeah, real top. Sakai just blew my mind when I was there again last. You just realise the place is just different. And Dainichi, these guys are operating on a different level. But no, again, to truly answer it, I need to know where you was at budget-wise. But ultimately, I think, covering mass market, those breeders I mentioned are a really good choice. NND's Kohaku have come on really well and offer a lot of great quality. But yeah, ultimately, that's where we're at. It's all right. I could just wade in and say, yeah, get a Dainichi Kohaku. But, if you're looking for a Nisai in this instance, straight away we're into thousands for anything of any kind of quality. So, yeah, always a tough question there. Right, let me dig out one more question. It's amazing how that hour flies by. Right, one last, seeing as though food's been such a big topic tonight. Lee Ferguson, in keeping with the food theme tonight, I have been feeding Aquasource 50-50 high growth and noticed some fish putting on a lot of body in the summer in a short space of time, one of them being a Shiro. Without being skeptical, could this be false body or actual result? Yeah, quite hard to answer without seeing that one, Lee, to be honest. But I mean, is it there now? Is the body there now? When it comes in a short space of time, it worries me where the weight goes on. Are we talking weight that's just been stuck on the sort of abdomen region underneath? Because that to me is false weight. That's just a fish getting fat and not actually building body, building the muscle and the fat where it needs to be to create the volume. With you saying a Shiro, that might point me towards the fact you might be sort of pointing out that it could be underneath, because that is a variety that is really quite prone to that, especially in more traditional lineages as well. It was an inherent part of the variety that they tended to get a bit weighty underneath. And yeah, the wrong sort of diet, or it could be the wrong body line, and then instantly, a food that can be quite fatty and sort of cling around the gut is going to really accentuate that a lot. So yeah, I've not got the full details there, but when it comes in a short space of time, it does concern me, especially if we're talking about bulk, because what we really want from bulk is, is power, body power, not weight sitting underneath. So I hope that helps you sort of determine where you're at with that one. So yeah. Wow, fantastic. Great, that's just what I need, a shopping trip. I better not say that because she'll kick my arse. Right, so yeah, just to sort of finish off, look out for the auction we're going to be doing for the fish with Crafty Koi for charity. We'll have some details out on that soon enough. And just for the last time, we've got the special event coming up, tickets being released this Saturday on the Exclusively Koi website for this sort of Tucano grow out event that we're doing in conjunction with Exclusively Koi and Lee Hadfield, aka the Koi Soldier. If you want full details on that, please head over to his channel. You can see the video. or pop on to our website, or actually for the Koi's website. I'm going to drop a video on Friday after I've done the selections. You can see the fish a little bit more. But yeah, tickets, only 50 tickets available, the special golden tickets. And yeah, it's going to be a great physical event. Like I say, entry is only available to those people with the tickets on the first part of the event. And then going to look to do something pretty cool and open it up a bit more for the return part of the event. But more to come on that one. So thank you all for tuning in, and yeah, I'll be back next week. See you all then.